Hello, NPS family. I am Catherine Smith, and today I have the pleasure of presenting the 2021 Alabama Course of Study, English Language Arts, Session 1, Oral Language and Print Concepts. During this session, I want you to note the bottom right-hand corner, which has an QR code that will give you access to the Alabama Course of Study ELA 2021, as well as content sub-area vertical alignments. Before we begin, let's take a closer look at the conceptual frameworks. The conceptual frameworks illustrates the goal of the 2021 Alabama Course of Study, English Language Arts, ensuring that all students achieve English language literacy. In view, there are 3 circles that depict literacies required of today's high school graduates and highlights the components and foundations of literacy. The dark red circle indicates the importance of strong foundations needed for all literacy areas. Literacy foundation includes oral language concepts of print, phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and writing. And all are closely aligned with the science of reading. The yellow and orange semicircles represent that 2 major components of literacy needed for effective communication: reception and expression. The outer circles break down the major categories into listening, reading, speaking, and writing. These are the 4 basic components of communication. For additional information on the conceptual frameworks, please see page 5 of the 2021 Alabama Course of Study, English Language Arts. Today, we will gain knowledge of the science of reading and the course of study. We will also briefly view the alignments of oral language and print concepts in grades kindergarten through 3. (2021) ELA Course of Study and the Science of Reading. The development of the K through 3 standards were guided by the science of reading, which is the body of research that has emerged from multiple disciplines to discover how the brain learns to read and write and why some students experience difficulty doing so. On page 22 of the Alabama Course of Study, English Language Arts, you'll read that the simple view of reading and the simple view of writing, Scarborough's reading rope, and Ehri's phases of word reading development were used to guide the development of these standards. Scarborough's reading rope, as seen on the screen, consists of upper and lower strands. Word recognition, the lower strand, which consists of phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition. All work together as the reader becomes fluent and increasingly automatic with repetition and practice. The upper strand, language comprehension, consists of background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge, reinforcing one another and then weaving together word recognition to produce skilled readers. Note, all do not happen overnight and requires instruction and practice over time. Let's first dive into oral language. Oral language is the system in which we use spoken words to express knowledge, ideas, and feelings. Oral language lays a foundation for not only reading but also writing skills that children need to develop as they enter and progress through school. Having a solid foundation in oral language will help children to become successful readers as well as communicators. Oral language concerns a child's vocabulary as well as his or her ability to speak clearly and fluently and understand conversation with others. The Alabama course of study used this research and embedded oral language beginning in kindergarten and ending in third grade. Let's take a look at oral language vertical alignment. Before we begin, in the lower left bottom corner, I've listed the page number for each grade level, K, 1, 2, and 3, within the course of study for your viewing. In looking at the standards for each grade level, you'll notice the standards outline what students should know and be able to do at the end of each grade level. Categories will change from one grade level to the next as students become more proficient in mastering foundational skills throughout the grade levels. In kindergarten, students have support and guidance of their teacher to ask and answer questions, seek help, get information, and clarify information presented orally through text or other media. Standard 4. While in first and second grade, that guidance and support is left off, and the expectation is that first and second grade students can do this independently. They can independently ask and answer questions to seek help, get information, or clarify information to confirm their understanding of information presented in text or in the digital format. Standard 3 for first grade, standard 2C for second grade. As students enter into the third grade, the expectation is for students to not only independently ask and answer questions, but also do this in complete sentences and using grade level vocabulary. Notice how oral language becomes rigorous as students progress through grade levels. Thus, it is imperative that students meet these grade level standards before successfully matriculating to the next grade level. We will now move into concepts of print. Concepts of print is the understanding that print carries meaning, that book contains letters and words. Concepts of print also includes an understanding of what books are used for and how books work, meaning how to turn pages, how to find the top and the bottom of a page, and how to identify the title and the front and back covers. Ehri's phases of word reading development and concepts of print aligns with the Alabama course of study in stating that during the pre-alphabetic phase, children recognize words based on features of the visual cues. This also matriculates into the early alphabetic phase where children begin to use letter sound correspondence to determine or sound out words. The other phases, later alphabetic and consolidated alphabetic, will be seen later when children develop automaticity in sight word recognition and letter sounds, which we call phonemic awareness. Now let's view the vertical alignment for concept of print. Note that concept of print is only seen in kindergarten and first grade, meaning that these two standards are expected to be successfully grasped with students in second, third, fourth, fifth grade and on. All right. Let's take a look at the vertical alignment for concept of print. In kindergarten, students have support from their teacher to explain the roles of the author and the illustrator of a text. While in first grade, the expectation is not only to explain the roles of the author and illustrator, but also locate the book title, which is print concepts, table of contents, and the names of authors and illustrators. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Good morning. I am Tony Johnson, local reading specialist at Highland Gardens Elementary School. Today, I am going to be turning around a training for the Alabama course of study in the areas of English language arts based on the 2021 standards. On the first page of my slideshow, there is a QR code for you to scan, which will give you full access to the entire document as it relates to the English Language Arts course of study for 2021. This training will cover the areas of phonological and phonemic awareness. This training is specifically designed for professional learning for Alabama's kindergarten through fifth grade teachers. The outcomes are as follows. By the end of this training, participants will gain a deeper understanding of the alignment between the 2021 English Language Arts course of study to the science of reading, particularly in the content sub-areas of phonological and phonemic awareness in grades kindergarten through third grade. Participants will also gain a deeper understanding of the vertical alignment of grade level standards for phonological and phonemic awareness, again in grades kindergarten through third grade. Here, on the very first page, you will see the conceptual framework for the English Language Arts Course of Study 2021. The conceptual framework is a visual representation that helps us understand the why behind the what. So let's take a few minutes to take a look at the conceptual framework. I want to bring to your attention that the conceptual framework is divided into 4 quadrants. We have reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Those are the outside perimeter areas of the conceptual framework. I would also like for you to note that those areas are of equal size, symbolizing that they are all of equal importance. We have to be able to teach our students to read, to write, to listen, and to speak in order to get that proficient reader, which is the ultimate goal. When we take a look at the orange and the yellow pieces, we see reception and expression. Reception is going to be for reading and listening because it refers to receiving information. Expression is going to be broken down into writing and speaking because it refers to producing information. And then there's the center of the conceptual framework, the core of the foundation, where all of the learning begins with building the foundation. I'd like to bring your attention to the items in the very center. I noticed that there is an iPad with a picture of the state of Alabama with a graduation cap on its head. This signifies the growing demand for our students to be technological literate. As you know, our students are going to be competing with their peers, not only in their states, but across other nations. And we would like to make sure that our students have the equal and same opportunity to get those jobs in which they will need to fall back on their technology skills. Now, we are going to move on to getting into the presentation on phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. Those are the areas in which you are going to deepen your knowledge and understanding level after watching this training. On this slide, we are going to get into the basic definitions of those 2 subcategories. Here you see the word phonology, which basically means the system of sounds. The first definition that I would like to bring your attention to is the definition for phonological awareness. That basically is the general understanding of the sound structure of words and sentences. This definition can be found in the Alabama Literacy Act on page 3. Then we have phonemic awareness, which is the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate individual sounds. Phonemic awareness is an auditory activity, which basically means that we need our ears in order to do this skill efficiently and effectively. This definition was compounded by the Alabama Literacy Act on page 2. On the next slide, there is a picture of an umbrella. Notice in the right-hand corner the diagram with the lady with her hand next to her ear. This reiterates what I just stated, that phonological and phonemic awareness are skills that we need to listen for in order to be sufficient. Here is the umbrella of phonological awareness. What I would like for you to leave here knowing today is that phonological awareness is basically getting the ears ready for what the eyes will see. There is absolutely no print. When we are engaging our young scholars in phonological and phonemic awareness activities, there is no print involved. The moment that we throw in print, we have crossed the bridge over to phonics. Before we can get to phonics, we need to solidify the areas of phonological and phonemic awareness. We need to be sure that our students are fluent in those areas, because this is the knowledge that they are going to need in order to be successful when they see that print on paper. So let's delve deeper into the areas of phonological and phonemic awareness. Here is that umbrella once again. Under the phonological awareness umbrella falls phonemic awareness. It falls under that umbrella. There are skills that fall under that umbrella as well. The first skill that I would like to talk about is rhyming. Rhyming is a phonological awareness skill. If I were to ask you to close your eyes, you would be able to successfully complete phonological and phonemic awareness activities or exercises. So let's take a few minutes to close our eyes and let's answer the question to the following exercise. Star and car are examples of words that rhyme or rhyming words. We do need to note that the standard for rhyming does have two parts. Our scholars are not only asked to identify rhyming words, but they are also asked to be able to produce those rhyming words. So once they are able to recognize 2 out of 3 words that rhyme in a series of exercises, you can gradually move them to exercises in which they have to produce the rhyming words, which means you may give them the word car and ask them to give you a word that rhymes with car. They can say things such as star, bar, and even nonsense words are acceptable. That is an example of rhyming. Our next phonological awareness skill is alliteration. Alliteration is when the initial sound is highlighted in many of the words in a silly phrase or a sentence. For example, I think we are all familiar with Peter Piper picked a pickle, or a big brown bug bit a bear. There is one particular sound that is initiated in all of those words in that silly phrase. That is an example of alliteration. That is also a necessary skill for our students to practice when we are helping them develop phonological awareness. Another phonological awareness skill is segmenting. This is when we give our students a word and we ask them to use their touch spelling fingers to tell us the sounds in the word. For example, if I say the word cat, the expectation is for our students to be able to say the sounds in cat or segment the word cat by saying k, a. That is an example of segmenting. Next, we have syllables, which is also an example of phonological awareness, or one of those skills that falls on the phonological awareness continuum. This is when we can teach our students to chop the word by using the multisensory strategy of the arm chop, or we can also use the chin check method, which is one that I like to use when I'm teaching my young scholars. Being able to divide the word into parts or syllables is a very important phonological awareness skill. Next, we have onset and rhyme, which is when our students can give us the sound that comes before the vowel sound in a word, which is referred to as the onset. The rhyme is the vowel and everything that comes after it. I like to call that the head and the body. For example, if we were to do the onset and the rhyme in the word cat, the example and the visual that I give my students looks like this. K, at. The head or the onset is k, and the rhyme or the body is at. That way, when students are trying to figure out if words rhyme or not, that gives them a visual to refer to. So we can say the words are k, at, d, og, at, og, at, og. Do they have the same body? Is the ending part the same? If not, the students can quickly say, no way, no way. Onset and rhyme is another important skill of phonological awareness. Finally, we have phonemic awareness. And that is when our students are able to substitute, delete, and add, manipulate the sounds in spoken words. These are all important skills that students need to master before moving over to phonics. Now, in our letters manual, we learn about Ehri's phases of word reading development. When we talk about phonological and phonemic awareness, there are some different skills in each of those phases that we can say, yes, that falls under phonological or phonemic awareness, or no, that does not fall under phonological or phonemic awareness. The first phase in Ehri's phases of word reading development is the pre-alphabetic phase. And in this phase, neither of the skills will fall under phonological or phonemic awareness. When we move to the early alphabetic phase, we see that there are two skills or areas that are phonological and phonemic awareness areas. The first one being early phonological phonemic awareness. and the second one being syllable, onset, rhyme, initial phoneme matching. Both of those are skills that lives in the phonological and phonemic awareness domains. Letter names and some letter sounds would not fall under phonological and phonemic awareness because when we look at letters and when we add letters in the mix, we have crossed the bridge to phonics. So that is why that very first skill is X'd out. In the later alphabetic phase, there is one skill that falls under phonological and phonemic awareness. That skill is basic phonemic awareness, segmentation, and blending of 3 to 4 phonemes. That skill does not call for students to have paper or to look at print. They can break words into parts or segment those words and blend by listening. The start of automatic sight word recognition and initial set of phoneme grapheme correspondences are also skills that would fall under the phonics domain. Finally, we have the consolidated alphabetic phase. The last skill, which is advanced phonemic awareness, deletion, substitution, and reversal, is the one that falls under phonological and phonemic awareness, simply because that exercise is a listening activity. It is an auditory activity that does not require our students to be able to or have to look at any print. When we look at increasingly automatic sight word recognition and orthographic mapping, phoneme grapheme links, phonograms, syllable patterns, morphemes, all those things involve print, which is why they are not checked. Once again, phonological and phonemic awareness is basically getting the ears ready for what the eyes will see. If it involves print, it is phonics and not phonological or phonemic awareness. Now, here we have our recurring standards in the areas of phonological and phonemic awareness. There are 5 recurring standards for kindergarten through 3rd grade phonological and phonemic awareness areas. Those 5 recurring standards can be found in your 2021 ELA course of study on page 24. Once again, you can retrieve the 2021 ELA course of study by scanning the QR code on the front page or the first slide in this slideshow. I would like for us to read through the recurring standards for kindergarten through 3rd grade. And then I would like for us to think about which, if any, of those 5 recurring standards are directly tied to phonological and phonemic awareness. You're hearing the word recurring over and over because that means these standards are going to appear multiple times throughout the standards once you start cruising through your 2021 ELA course of study standards and framework. So, which of those 5 standards are directly tied to phonological and phonemic awareness? I know that you will be able to answer that question once you have your document in front of you, but for today, we are going to go ahead and say that recurring standards 1 and 2 are the 2 that are directly tied to phonological and phonemic awareness. When we look at recurring standard 1, utilize active listening skills during the discussion and conversation in pairs, small groups, or whole class settings following agreed upon rules for participation. The key word in recurring standard 1 is active listening skills. Remember, phonological and phonemic awareness activities and exercises require our scholars to be able to actively listen in order to give us the desired responses. In recurring standard 2, use knowledge of phoneme grapheme correspondences and word analysis skills to decode and encode words accurately. The operative word in recurring standard 2 is use knowledge. In order for them to effectively and efficiently be able to put those phoneme grapheme correspondence together to decode and encode words, they must rely heavily on their knowledge of phonological and phonemic awareness. So those are the two recurring standards that are directly tied to phonological and phonemic awareness. In the next activity, we are going to trace the standards for alignment. In your 2021 ELA course of study, you are going to have standards in all domains for grades K through 5. Today, we are going to focus on K through 3, being that we are being trained in the areas of phonological and phonemic awareness. What you are going to notice that is going to be different from your 2016 ELA standards is that your 2021 standards are numbers. You will not, or there will not be a need to say, I'm working on RFK.2D. Your 2021 standards are simply numbers. For example, the standard that we are going to trace through kindergarten through 3rd grade will begin in kindergarten with standard 9. In kindergarten, standard 9 means that the kindergarten students are being asked to demonstrate early phonological awareness to basic phonemic awareness skills in spoken words. That standard is aligned to 1st grade phonological and phonemic awareness standard number 6, which is to demonstrate basic to advanced phonological and phonemic awareness skills in spoken words. As we continue to trace the standard in grade 2, that standard is going to be simply standard 9, which is to demonstrate advanced phonemic awareness skills in spoken words. And once again, as we move down to grade 3, you're going to notice that that standard is standard number 7, which is the same exact expectation in 3rd grade as it is in 2nd grade. In grades 4 and 5, there are no phonological or phonemic awareness standards. That is because there is a shift from oral language to written responses to literature. I think that it is important to note here that just because there are no phonological or phonemic awareness standards for grades 4 and 5, that does not mean that we do not have students that still have deficits in the areas of phonological and phonemic awareness. There may be a need for our 4th and 5th grade teachers to intervene on our students' behalf in an effort to strengthen that literacy foundation in the area of phonological and phonemic awareness. 4th and 5th grade teachers and students do have phonics standards. If they are weak in their phonological or phonemic awareness areas, then it's going to show up when they try to decode those words in the area of phonics. Another thing that I wanted us to kind of look at and compare is the terminology that we're seeing in the standard that we have traced. What are some things that we are noticing that is the same or different as the standard progresses from one grade level to the next? From kindergarten to first grade, with the standard that we are tracing, I noticed the word early for this particular standard in grade K. Demonstrate early phonological awareness to basic phonemic awareness skills in spoken words. In grade 1, the word early disappears and it just states to demonstrate basic to advanced phonological and phonemic awareness skills in spoken words. As we move from grade 1 to grade 2, the word advanced is highlighted. And then once we look at the standard in grade 3, we do want to note again that the expectation is the same on that level for this particular standard for phonological and phonemic awareness. So our second grade students have another opportunity to master the skill of demonstrating advanced phonological awareness skills in spoken words. Now, we've talked about phonological and phonemic awareness. We've listed some examples. We've discussed some examples. Now it's time for us to kind of reflect and think about the academic language that we noticed in the standard that we trace and that you will notice as you take a deeper look at your grade level's specific standards. What academic language from these standards is currently incorporated during classroom instruction? What needs to be adjusted and or added when the 2021 ELA course of study is implemented? One of the things that I could think of right off the top of my head was the importance of using the proper terminology across the school. For example, when we are asking our scholars to segment words and produce the initial, medial, and final sounds, we want to make sure that we are saying initial and not first. We want to make sure that we are saying medial and not middle. We want to make sure that we are saying final and not last. Also, when we're talking about those syllables, we want to make sure that we use the terminology syllable as opposed to word part. Another very important one you're going to see throughout the 2021 course of study standards is the word encoding. We want to make sure that we use the terminology encoding as opposed to spelling. That is what the students are going to see when they take the standardized test. Now we have the continuum of phonological awareness. Phonological awareness is the lowest literacy level. When we think about the systematic approach, we want to make sure that we start with the lowest literacy level. And the lowest literacy level is phonological awareness. When we do that, we start in the early part of this continuum when we engage our students in activities that require them to be able to rhyme, identify alliteration, segment sentences into their spoken words, give us the number of syllables in words, and be able to identify onsets and rhymes in spoken words. Again, all of those are oral or auditory activities. We then move on down to our basic, which is where phonemic awareness in the areas of blending and segmenting will appear. And finally, we take our students to the area of advanced phonemic awareness, where we engage them in activities that will allow them to add, delete, substitute, reverse phonemes in spoken words. This figure was adopted from Carol Tolman's Hourglass figure of 2018. The graphic that is in the right bottom corner of the screen is from our letters manual. When we talk about Scarborough's rope, we know that one portion of that rope is the word recognition portion. The skills that are included in word recognition are phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition of familiar words. Finally, as we close and we come to an end of our phonological and phonemic awareness training, we see the quote here, "A picture is worth 1,000 words." As you reflect from today's phonological and phonemic awareness presentation, is there a visual image being painted? How comfortable are you with the current level of content knowledge? Is there additional professional development needed to guide you through transitioning from the 2016 ELA standards to the 2021 ELA standards? As reflective practitioners, these are some things that we can journal or we can discuss with our peer teachers just so that we can understand what is coming as it relates to the 2021 standards. I hope that you take advantage of all of the opportunities to gain more knowledge on these standards. Phonological and phonemic awareness is just one session, as there are other areas in which you will need to familiarize yourself as well as your grade level standards for the 2022-2023 school year. This is the conclusion of the 2021 ELA course of study, phonological and phonemic awareness training. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy Wren. I'm the local reading specialist at Highland Avenue Elementary School. Today we'll be discussing the Alabama course of study, English Language Arts 2021 standards in the area of phonics and fluency. Our outcomes for this session will be for participants to gain an understanding of the breadth and depth of the ELA course of study standards in K3 and 4-5. They will also gain a deeper understanding of the vertical alignment of grade level standards for phonics and fluency. As we look at the 21 ELA Course of Study Conceptual Framework, we know that it is a visual representation that helps to illustrate a body of interrelated objectives and fundamentals. It is a visual tool that helps you analyze and gain a comprehensive understanding of the makeup of the 2021 ELA Course of Study. Where do phonics and fluency, our focus area for this session, live in the conceptual frameworks? It lives in the dark red Literacy Foundation band, which indicates the importance of a strong foundation needed for all areas of literacy. Why would these two foundational areas of literacy be woven together in this session? Because in Scarborough's reading rope, fluency is the weaving of the two portions, as we'll see later in this presentation. A definition of phonics is the relationship between letters of written language and the individual sounds of spoken language, including syllable types, morphology of Greek and Latin roots, and multisyllabic words. Why is phonics important? In order for children to understand what they read, they must be able to do it quickly and automatically. This skilled, fluent reading requires a repertoire of strategies to draw on. These strategies include using a knowledge of sound-spelling relationships, phonics. Louisa Moats is quoted as saying, "The link between sound, symbol, and meaning must be constructed like a layered cake, systematically and explicit." Systematic phonics instruction is designed to increase accuracy in decoding and word recognition skills, which in turn facilitate comprehension. Phonics instruction will also improve spelling ability because it emphasizes spelling patterns that become familiar from reading. Here are the page numbers where the phonics standards are located in the 2021 Course of Study book. And as you look over those, we will look at a particular standard and look at the vertical alignment of phonics. This standard can be found in kindergarten as well as first grade. It is to apply knowledge of phoneme, grapheme, correspondence, and word analysis skills to decode and encode, spell words accurately in both isolation and in decodable grade level appropriate text. As students move from first grade into second and second into third, they then have to be able to apply knowledge of phoneme, grapheme, correspondence, multisyllabic word construction, and syllable division principles to decode and encode, spell words accurately in isolation and in context. As students move from third grade to fourth grade, they have to be able to apply knowledge of grade level appropriate phoneme, grapheme, correspondence, syllable types, and morphological structure to read unfamiliar multisyllabic words accurately, both in context and in isolation. And then as students move to fifth grade, they are to apply phonics and word analysis skills to encode and decode words in grade level text. As you can see in these standards and the alignment, there are a lot of academic words that we need to use with our students, from phoneme to grapheme in kindergarten and first, to multisyllabic word construction and syllable division principles in second and third, and even syllable types and morphological structure to read unfamiliar multisyllabic words in fourth grade. Now let's talk about fluency. Fluency is the ability to read with accuracy, appropriate rate, and proper expression. Why is fluency important? The goal of fluency instruction is to make the reading of words and sentences effortless, so that a child can attend to what the text means. Sufficient amounts of reading and rereading text is the best way to help children develop automaticity and reading ease so that they can focus on building meaning. Children who read more fluently read more. Here is a quote from Education Week that says the National Reading Panel, a group of reading experts convened by Congress, flagged fluency as a pillar of reading instruction, along with phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, and comprehension. But researchers also noted that fluency, a precursor of comprehension, is often neglected in classroom instruction. Here are the standards and the page numbers where the standards for fluency are located in K through 3. As you look over these, we will look at the fluency vertical alignment from kindergarten through 5th grade. In kindergarten, they apply previously taught phoneme grapheme correspondence to decodable words with accuracy and automaticity in and out of context. In 1st grade, they read grade-appropriate text with accuracy and fluency. 2nd grade, they read and reread appropriate text accurately, automatically, and with meaningful expression at a rate which supports comprehension. They also must do this in 3rd grade. In 4th grade, students must demonstrate fluency when reading orally with appropriate pauses, phrasing, stress, intonation, rate, and integration to support comprehension. As students reach 5th grade, we expect them to demonstrate fluency when independently reading, writing, and speaking in response to grade level literary and informational texts, including stories, dramas, poetry, and cross-curriculum text. Notice how the complexity and rigor of the standards increases from grade to grade. What would we expect a kindergartner to be fluent in? That would include letter naming, letter sounds. What would fluency look like for a 1st grader at the beginning of the year? That might include blending and decoding. What would fluency look like for a 1st grader late in the year? What would fluency look like for 2nd grade? And what would fluency look like for 3rd grade and above? Those are some important questions that we can answer, and the standards will tell us how. Now looking at recurring standards K3, what recurring standard supports phonics and fluency? That would be R2. Use knowledge of phoneme grapheme correspondence and word analysis skills to decode and encode words accurately. We've spent a lot of time talking about the K3 standards, and that as we dive into the fluency and phonics standards for grades 4-5, note that this is the first time literacy foundations are explicitly taught in those grades. Here are where you can locate the phonics and fluency standards for 4th and 5th grade in your Alabama course of study. And here's some questions that you can ask when you're looking at it. What do the standards require of our students? How do other components of the conceptual framework begin to surface? And how do these standards compare to 2016 standards for 4th and 5th grade? It is noted that across grades 2 and 3, the focus area boxes are empty as an intentional omission to show how they will be embedded in future grades. You can see that those are coming in 4th and 5th grade as well. And lastly, let's look at Scarborough's reading rope, and you can see where phonics is in the word recognition down here in the decoding and sight recognition, as well as fluency, which is beginning to combine both word recognition and language comprehension. Thank you.
Hello, fellow educators. I'm Kim Copeland. I am the local reading specialist at Katoma Elementary School, and I'm here to give you your course of study turnaround for vocabulary and comprehension. Before we get started, if you will scan that QR code on the top right-hand corner, that will give you access to the course of study and also the vertical alignment and any other handouts that you will need. We're going to start with the outcomes. Participants will gain an understanding of the breadth and depth of the ELA course of study standards in K3 and 4 and 5, gain a deeper understanding of the alignment between the 2021 English Language Arts course of study to the science of reading, particularly in the literacy foundation sub-areas of vocabulary and comprehension, K5, and gain a deeper understanding of the vertical alignment of grade level standards for vocabulary and comprehension for K3 as well as 4-5. Let's look at the conceptual framework for a moment. I know that my esteemed colleagues have also already talked about the framework, but I will go over it briefly in case you're looking at this one as a standalone. As I said, today we will be focusing on vocabulary and comprehension, but if you look at the conceptual framework, that is a visual representation of the ELA standards. So we have our literacy foundations in red, which have already been addressed. Then you have the yellow and the orange circles, which are reception and expression, and I'll be talking a little bit more about those as they deal with vocabulary and comprehension momentarily. And then you have your reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And as you can see, reading and listening are part of that reception. Those are the things that you can hear and understand. And then you have the writing and speaking. Those are things that you can express, that you can say or write or find other ways to express yourself. And especially in the area of vocabulary, the reception side of it is going to be a little bit of a simpler skill. It is easier to hear something and have an understanding of it than it is to be able to express it, to come up with something and have that output. Okay, so now we're going to continue on with the conceptual framework, and we're going to look at this quote. Let me move myself. Multisensory learning involves the use of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic tactile pathways simultaneously to enhance memory and learning of written language. Links are consistently made between the visual, which is the language we see, auditory, which is the language we hear, and kinesthetic tactile, which are the language symbols that we feel in those pathways in learning to read and spell. So the brain does much better when we are seeing things, hearing things, and touching them, whether it's tracing on the desk, it's tapping with your fingers. I know even for me, when I write things down, I'm much more likely to remember them even without going back to the list, because the act of writing gives me that visual and it gives me that tactile. So these are definitely things that you want to incorporate within your lessons. Okay, so now let's get some common definitions. We've got vocabulary. Vocabulary is the body of written or oral language known to an individual. And obviously the point of all of it is we want that vocabulary to increase as the students progress through school. And comprehension is the ability to read and process text and understand its meaning. So obviously, comprehension is going to be much, much harder if the students do not have a large body of written or oral language. If we do not have words that are known to us, it's going to be really hard for us to comprehend a text and understand its meaning. According to Stahl and Nagy, vocabulary accounts for approximately 50 to 60% of the variance in reading comprehension. And if you are in letters, they also talk about how after students have the phonetic code, vocabulary is the single most important or influential thing that's going to impact student comprehension. So obviously it's a very important skill that we need to focus in on. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some recurring vocabulary standards. These are going to be standards that are throughout. They should be taught daily. They're not necessarily a standard that you're testing on. They're just things that we should be doing all the time within our grade levels. So for K3, the recurring standard is R3, which is expand background knowledge and build vocabulary through discussion, reading, and writing. And for 4 and 5, the recurring vocabulary standard is use context clues to determine meanings of unfamiliar spoken or written words. Both of these recurring standards can be found at the beginning of each grade level in that course of study. Okay, I'm just going to give you a list. These are where you can find your vocabulary standards page numbers. Again, in that course of study, I'm not going to read them one by one, but this is something that if you need to pause to find the page numbers, you're welcome to, and then continue me on when you're ready. And then we have our comprehension standards page numbers for the course of study as well. Okay, we're going to take a slight redirect and we're going to talk about the different tiers when we are teaching. Tier 1 is going to be our whole class teaching. It should be strategic, but with the whole class, you're looking at least 80%. So you want at least 80% of your students to master these vocabulary and comprehension skills. If at least 80% of your students are not mastering these standards, now we need to look at our teaching, our tier 1 teaching, and see what we can tweak or change in order to have 80% of our students mastering this. But if we do have the 80% mastering, now that additional 20% will go into tier 2. Tier 2 we expect to move, now we should be having about 15%. So out of the 20, there should only be about 5% left that isn't mastering. Tier 2 is looking at things like reteaching, additional resources, more examples. These are things where when you get into your small groups, you can still focus on a standard that hasn't been mastered, where we don't have to teach the whole group now because most of the students have mastered it. And then we get into our tier 3, which is should only be about 5% of our students. That's when we're really, really being as explicit and systematic as possible, but we're also thinking about some interventions, maybe some pullouts, and even some screenings may be necessary if students if students are at tier 3. Okay, so now I'm going to give you your vertical alignment for comprehension. This just shows how the standards really build on top of one another. So it is very, very important as teachers that we meet these standards fully to fidelity. We teach them to fidelity so that when the students get to the next grade, they are able to fully master the new standard. So for comprehension, we start with kindergarten with prompting and support. Identify the main ideas and key details in an informational text. That moves in first grade to identify the main idea and key details of literary and informational text. As you can see, there is a very important phrase that changes from kindergarten to first grade, and that is the prompting and support is no longer there. So students should be able to identify those main ideas without the teacher prompting or without the teacher supporting. Then we move on to second grade, identify the main idea and supporting details of literary and informational text. So now they should be specifically giving details that support the main idea or what they've stated as the main idea, as opposed to just details within the story. Then we move to third grade, determine the explicit or implied main idea and supporting details. Now we're getting to more complex text. The text may not necessarily have a very clear main idea. It's going to be a little bit more read between the lines, and the students are going to be expected to determine that. And then we move to fourth grade, explain how the relevant details support the implied or explicit main idea of a text. Now they're explaining. So as we progress, that shows that they really know what they have read, and they have really mastered that skill because they are able to explain it to the teacher or to their classmates. And then we get to fifth grade, determine the implied and or explicit main idea of literary and informational text. So we have the informational and the literary text, and we need to be able to get the explicit or the implied main idea. So fifth grade is kind of taking all of the things that we've done from K through 4 and putting them all together so that the students have a great grasp on comprehension. Now we're moving on to vocabulary, and we start again with kindergarten. With guidance and support, orally utilize new academic, content-specific, grade-level vocabulary and relate new words to prior knowledge. Then we move to first grade. Utilize new academic, content-specific, grade-level vocabulary, make connections to previously learned words, and relate new words to background knowledge. Again, with guidance and support in kindergarten, they're utilizing these words orally. And now in first grade, there's no more guidance and support, and it doesn't just say orally, so they should be able to do this orally and written. When you move up to second grade, they're doing very similar things, but the grade level vocabulary is going to increase, and they should be relating even more words to that background knowledge. So the standards vertically are very similar for first, second, and third grade, and that is because the grade level vocabulary is going to increase. So the skill is the same, but now we're expecting the level of the vocabulary to increase as students go from first grade to third grade. Then we move to fourth grade, and there's always a shift when you get to fourth grade. And now it says accurately interpret general academic and domain specific words. That's when we're getting into some of those very specific words that are academic. We're getting into text now, not just things that we say orally. These are those tier 2 words. These are going to be things that will work across the curriculum. It's going to be the things that are most important for students to know in order to be strong readers. These are the things that are going to impact their comprehension. And then fifth grade, just as with comprehension, it's kind of mashing everything together. It's this is the final exam. Kind of fifth grade is where they really need to have these skills mastered. So acquire and use grade level vocabulary, clarifying the meaning of unknown and multiple meaning words and phrases in a text, choosing flexibly from a range of strategies. So all of the things that they've done K through 4, they should be able to choose now because they've done them all. And again, this relates to how important it is at each grade level for us to be fully teaching these standards so that the students are not at a deficit when they move on. I would like to thank you for taking the time. Again, I'm Kim Copeland at Katoma. I am a reading coach. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me or anyone else that has been on this video. Have a great day. Hello, fellow MPS educators. I am Kim Copeland. I am the local reading specialist at Katoma Elementary School, and I am here today to give you the course of study turnaround presentation for writing. Before we begin, if you will scan that QR code in the top right-hand corner, that's going to give you digital access to the course of study, as well as the vertical alignment and any other important handouts. Let's start with our learning outcomes. At the end of this presentation, participants will gain a deeper understanding of the alignment between the 2021 English Language Arts course of study to the science of reading, particularly in the literacy foundation sub-area of writing. Gain a deeper understanding of the vertical alignment of grade level standards for writing, and clarify an understanding of how the writing standards are implemented in instruction and coaching. All of these understandings will be from K to 5. Okay? By this point, you should be very familiar with the conceptual framework, as my esteemed colleagues and I have been, if you've been watching this presentation all the way through. This is a visual representation of the standards for English language arts that we are implementing as of 2020. They're the 2021 standards, and we'll be implementing them as of the 2022 school year. As you can see, we're in writing, which is going to live in the outside green circle. We have writing is part of the expression section, because now we are able to say and produce and express by using writing. Obviously, that means that all of the other circles have to have a strong base. If we don't have the literacy foundations, we are not going to be able to write well. And also, reception is a simpler skill. So we have to have that reception strong so that we can express, because we cannot express things that we don't know. So that's the circle, and that's how writing is involved with that. Now, we're going to try to make the connection. The reason writing is at the end is because you have to make the connection from the reading standards to the writing standards. So your students have to have already worked on these reading standards in order to strengthen their writing standards. For example, vocabulary. The students have to have a base of words that they can pull from when they are writing. The larger the vocabulary, the more clear and concise as well as detailed their writing is going to be. Then you have comprehension. Oftentimes, because writing is expression, you will be expressing something that you have already read. So we're taking an input and we need to comprehend what we're reading in order to write about it. Oral language and concepts of print, which normally we think about as a very foundational and even early literacy skill, but that also has to do with things like headings and text features and making sure that we can include those in our writing. Phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. Students can't write what they can't hear. So we have to make sure they have that strong base in order to be able to write, which of course leads to phonics, because that's the letters, what that they heard with the phonological awareness. So phonics is the ability to begin to actually put those sounds into the graphemes onto paper. And last but not least, fluency. Just as in reading, the fluency is what's going to allow students to have stronger writing and more exciting writing, and to be able to write for extended periods of time. So again, all of these are the same skills that they've learned and that we've been practicing with reading, and they're partnering in writing. So while we're teaching these reading skills, we can also be having outputs of writing, and doing it at the same time not only saves time, but it lets students see how one affects the other. All right, we have talked about the simple view of reading already in some of these previous videos. Now we have the simple view of writing. And in the same fashion, it's a math sentence. So foundational skills times compositional skills equals skilled writing. So if you are missing either foundational skills, which would be a 0, or compositional skills, also a 0, then you have a 0. So you're not getting skilled writing. And the way multiplication works, if you're missing one or the other, we're still going to have a 0. So students are not going to have skilled writing if either of these important pieces are missing. Some examples of foundational skills: letter formation, handwriting, word sentence organization, punctuation. Science has shown that just the act of forming letters actually triggers those synapses in the brain to help you better remember the sounds and better read. So that letter formation and that handwriting is very important for students to become skilled writers. Then that second part, the composition skills, that's the ability to now take my thoughts and ideas and put them into words. So topic knowledge, I have to have some background knowledge. I have to know something about this particular topic, and that's where the reading comes in, because I've comprehended what it was that I read in order to formulate an idea about it. Vocabulary and word choice, these should sound familiar as the circles that I just showed you. Sentence formation, now we're getting into grammar and usage, and even things like audience, making sure I can correctly address whoever this writing is going to. So making sure that we are both able to physically write, which is the handwriting, the letter formation, those foundational skills, but also we are able to mentally write as well, because we're getting these ideas onto paper. And of course, the goal is the skilled writing. Okay, we should be familiar with Scarborough's reading rope, which is on the left-hand side. That's where you've got the language comprehension and the word recognition, which weave together tightly for skilled reading. that fluent execution and coordination of language comprehension and word recognition. On the right-hand side in the green, you see language expression. If you notice, the categories are the same. The background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge for the language expression. And then for the word production section, we have the phonological, orthographic, morphological, and semantic awareness, encoding, and transcription. So the word production part is a little bit different because now we are encoding instead of decoding, but we still need that phonological awareness in order to create now. Now we are writing these words that we were before able to read. But obviously both of them work in the same way. You need to get more and more skilled, and it should become more automatic where students are able to write more automatically, and so much brain power is not going towards how to physically shape a D, but now they can write words because that becomes an automatic skill that they have. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the recurring standards. And first I'm going to start with K3. And the recurring standards you will find in your course of study at the beginning of each grade level. And we're going to talk specifically about how they relate to writing. These are standards that you should be working on every day with your students. And so let me just kind of go through these and give you some examples and why they're so important. If you notice, number 1 doesn't actually say anything about writing, but it says active listening skills during discussion and conversation. So the things that they talk about will be the things that they're able to write about. So being able to use those skills will better help them when it comes to the writing part. Then we have the use knowledge of phoneme, grapheme correspondences, and word analysis to decode and encode words correctly. That's the spelling. Expand background knowledge and build vocabulary through discussion, reading, and writing. Because as you are writing, it's actually part of your process to think about what you've learned, and it actually strengthens your learning by writing what it is you just read. Just as a discussion does. Also, using digital and electronic tools appropriately, safely, and ethically for research and writing, both individually and collaboratively. So group assignments, but being able to research and write based on what it was that we read. And last but not least for K3, utilize the writing process to plan, draft, revise, edit, and publish writings in various genres. So students should be working on the process and not just writing and then that's the end of it. They should be looking at it again and finding ways to make it better. It becomes more natural and it doesn't seem so tough for someone else to look at your work. Now we're going to talk about the 4th and 5th grade recurring standards in writing. They are very similar. R1 is very similar. R2, as you can see, is starting to get a little bit higher of a standard. Use context clues to determine meaning of unfamiliar spoken or written words. So now students are using that background knowledge, which is imperative because they cannot use a context clue if they don't have enough background knowledge to understand the context. Again, with the digital electronic tools, that's very similar. Utilize a writing process to plan, draft, revise, edit, and publish. Identify and explain literary devices in prose and poetry. That is a little bit different, but it's that explain is where we get to that writing prompt. And then assess the formality of occasions in order to speak or write using appropriate language and tone. So R5 and R6, making sure they know their audience and making sure they're able to explain what they're reading. Again, that's that expression part of our standards. Here are the page numbers for your grade level writing standards for each grade. I am not going to read them to you, but if you need to pause here, that would be totally fine because this is the end of the presentation. I would like to say thank you so much for joining me. Again, I'm Kim Copeland. If you have any questions or concerns about anything you've seen in these videos, please email me, kimberly.copeland at the very long MPS email. Again, have a great day, and what you're doing makes a difference.